Ava sat quietly in the back row of her classroom. Her chair was a little wobbly, and the desk had scratches all over it, but she didn't complain. She never did. She just sat there, hands folded, eyes lowered, listening more than she spoke. The other students didn't talk to her much. Some ignored her completely. Others whispered behind her back. "That's the girl whose mom cleans houses," one boy said. "I heard she wears the same shoes every year," a girl giggled. No one knew much about Ava, and no one cared to ask. She always came to school early, never late, always did her homework, and never caused trouble. But in a world where loud voices and fancy clothes got attention, Ava stayed invisible. She wore plain clothes, clean but faded. Her bag was old and stitched at the corners. Her notebooks were full of neat handwriting, but nobody ever asked to see them. Her teachers rarely praised her, and when they did, it was quickly forgotten. Except one teacher, Mr. Daniels. Mr. Daniels didn't like Ava. No one knew why. Maybe it was her silence, or maybe he just believed the rumors about her being slow or too quiet. One morning during history class, Mr. Daniels asked a difficult question. "Who can tell me what sparked the Second World War?" The class stayed silent. Then, quietly, Ava raised her hand. "Yes," Mr. Daniels said with a smirk. "Let's hear it from the girl who doesn't talk." A few students laughed. Ava looked down but answered softly. "The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand in 1914. Mr. Daniels froze. She was right. But instead of praising her, he said coldly, Lucky guess. Even a broken clock is right twice a day." Laughter exploded in the room. Ava didn't say another word. She didn't cry. She didn't argue. She just sat still, her hands now gripping the edge of the desk. But Maya, a girl who sat 2 rows ahead, noticed something. Ava's eyes weren't just hurt. They were holding back something. Something strong. Something unspoken. At lunch, Ava sat under the big tree behind the school, eating a sandwich wrapped in newspaper, alone. Maya walked by with her friends. They laughed and talked about a birthday party coming up. One of them said, "Imagine inviting someone like her. What would she bring? A gift from the garbage." They all laughed. Maya didn't. She looked back at Ava, sitting calmly, feeding crumbs to a bird. There was something different about her. Not weak. Not sad. Just still. That evening, Ava went home quietly. Her house was small, just 2 rooms, near the railway line. But it was clean. Simple. On the wall hung a photo of a man in military uniform, standing proud, medals on his chest. Her father. Her mother smiled as Ava walked in. "You okay, sweetie?" Ava nodded. Same as always. Her mom placed food on the table. Dad called today. Ava's eyes lit up. "Really? Is he okay?" "He's more than okay. He said he'll be back soon. He also said, 'Don't let anyone make you feel small.'" Ava smiled and whispered, "They think I'm powerless. They don't know who I am." The next morning at school, a surprise awaited her. Mr. Daniels posted test results on the board. At the top, Ava Johnson, 98%. Whispers filled the classroom. "How did she beat me?" One rich boy grumbled. "She must have cheated," someone else said. Mr. Daniels didn't say a word. During recess, a group of students surrounded Ava's desk. "Hey," one said, "you think you're smart now?" Ava looked at them calmly. "I don't need to think it." The room went quiet. Mr. Daniels walked in, saw the tension, and spoke loudly. "Some people are just good at memorizing facts. That doesn't make them great." Ava stood up, and for the first time, she looked him directly in the eyes. "My father says true greatness isn't loud. It proves itself when the time is right." The bell rang. Class ended, but the words stayed in the air. Maya watched from the doorway, stunned. That night, Maya wrote in her journal, "There's something powerful about Ava. Something I don't understand yet, but I want to. And Ava, she just folded a small note in her notebook and tucked it under her textbook. On it, she had written, "They laughed today, but they won't tomorrow." The next morning, Ava walked into school as if nothing had happened. Same calm steps, same silent gaze, but something in the air had changed. Now, they were watching her. Not just laughing. Watching. That girl beat everyone in the test. Someone whispered near the lockers. "She's hiding something," another one said. Some students began spreading new rumors. "She's probably some kind of spy. Maybe her dad works for someone dangerous. Or maybe she's just lucky." Maya heard it all, but she didn't laugh. She couldn't. She remembered the way Ava stood up to Mr. Daniels. Not with anger. With calm strength, like someone who didn't need to shout to be heard. At lunch, Ava sat in her usual spot under the big tree. Alone. But this time, Maya slowly walked toward her. "Hi," Maya said, standing with her lunch tray. Ava looked up, slightly surprised. She nodded politely. "Mind if I sit here?" Ava shook her head. Maya sat. For a few seconds, they both ate quietly. No small talk. No awkwardness. "You were amazing yesterday," Maya finally said. Ava looked down. "Thank you. Can I ask you something?" Maya said, softly. "Who taught you to be like this? So quiet, but strong." Ava hesitated. Then she said, "My dad. He says storms don't always make noise. Sometimes they move in silence." Maya smiled. She liked that. But not everyone liked Ava's calm power. Later that day, in the science lab, a group of students purposely spilled water near Ava's desk. "Oops," said one boy, laughing. "Didn't mean to get your only shoes wet." The class laughed again. Ava simply wiped the water with a tissue, didn't say a word, and moved on. Mr. Daniels stood nearby, but didn't interfere. He never did. That evening, Maya followed Ava out of school. At a distance, she wanted to know more. Ava walked past the crowded market, past the train tracks, and into a small home with a blue door. Maya stood across the street, unsure whether to go closer. Just then, a loud voice came from inside. "Keep your chin up, Ava." It was a man's voice. Strong. Confident. The door opened slightly. Maya caught a glimpse. A tall man stood inside. Broad shoulders. Military haircut. Wearing an old uniform shirt. His chest had medals shining, even in the dim light. Maya's eyes widened. That's her dad. She rushed back home, heart beating fast. The next day at school, Maya sat next to Ava on purpose. "Your dad. He's in the army." Ava looked at her, surprised. "How do you know?" "I just guessed." Ava smiled. "He's more than that." But before she could say anything more, Mr. Daniels walked in, carrying a file. "New seating chart," he announced. "Some students think they're too clever. Time to change things up." He separated Ava and Maya. "Back row for Miss Johnson," he said, looking directly at Ava. Some students laughed again. But this time, Ava didn't look down. She walked to the back, calm as ever. Maya raised her hand. "Sir, that's not fair." Mr. Daniels narrowed his eyes. "Life isn't fair, Maya. Sit down." That afternoon, a small note appeared in Maya's locker. It was in Ava's handwriting. "It's okay. He's trying to break me. But I'm not made of glass." That evening, Maya told her parents everything. They were shocked. Next day at school, whispers turned to chaos. Somebody had told the whole school. Ava's dad was a decorated military officer. Not just any soldier, but someone who had saved lives in rescue missions and was once honored by the president himself. Suddenly, students were confused. "Wait, what? Is that even true? Why didn't she ever say anything?" Even the teachers were surprised. But Ava didn't react. She didn't smile, didn't show off. She just kept walking through the hallways, quiet, focused, as always. Maya walked beside her and asked, "Why don't you ever tell them who your dad is?" Ava replied, "Because who I am shouldn't depend on someone else's name. One day, they'll respect me for me." At that moment, the principal walked past them and said loudly, "Students from humble backgrounds should know their place." Ava stopped, looked at the principal, and said softly, "Tomorrow, you'll know mine." She walked away, silent but powerful. Maya froze. She didn't know what Ava meant, but she had a feeling. Tomorrow would change everything. The school buzzed with whispers. Ava's words had left an echo. "Tomorrow, you'll know mine." Nobody understood what she meant, but everyone felt something was coming. Some students even joked nervously, "Maybe she'll call her dad to school and show us his medals." One boy laughed, "That'll impress Mr. Daniels." But there was a lingering doubt in the air. No one was laughing as much anymore. The students were uneasy, unsure of how to treat Ava now that they knew about her father's reputation. In the hallways, they still whispered, "Did you hear? Ava's dad is a war hero. I can't believe she didn't tell anyone. Does she think she's better than us? She's so quiet. I bet she thinks we're all beneath her." But Ava wasn't paying attention. As always, she sat at the back of the class, her head down, hands busy scribbling in her notebook. She ignored the stares and the murmurs. Nothing had changed for her, at least, not in the way people expected. The next morning, Ava walked to school just like she always did, slow, steady steps with her worn shoes clicking on the pavement. But as she passed the usual street corner, she noticed something different. A black SUV was parked at the curb. It wasn't there the day before. The windows were tinted, so no one could see who was inside. Curiosity filled her chest, but she didn't let it show. She kept walking. At school, things felt different. The air was thick with anticipation. No one knew exactly what to expect, but everyone felt something was about to happen. First period came, and everyone anxiously waited for Ava to arrive. As the minutes ticked by, whispers spread like wildfire. "Ava's dad is here. He's in the parking lot." Suddenly, the loudspeaker clicked on. "Attention, students!" The principal's voice echoed through the hall. "Please stay seated. We have a special guest visiting our school today. Please be respectful." The students exchanged glances, unsure of what that meant. Who could it be? The door to the classroom opened, and in walked Ava. But this time, she wasn't alone. Behind her stood a tall man, dressed in a sharp dark suit. His face was strong, with sharp features and eyes that commanded respect. He looked out of place in a school like this. Too clean, too perfect, like he belonged in a boardroom rather than a classroom. But the way he walked, calm yet confident, made everyone stop and stare. This was Ava's dad. Ava didn't look at him. She just walked past the shocked students and sat at her desk, keeping her head down as if nothing was different. But everyone in the room was frozen, eyes wide in disbelief. The principal, Mr. Green, was the first to recover. He rushed over to greet the man. "Mr. Johnson, what a pleasant surprise," he said, his voice too cheery. "We weren't expecting you today. How can we help you?" Ava's father didn't say a word. He just looked at Mr. Green and then scanned the room. His gaze was steady, as if assessing everyone. "Actually," he said, his voice deep and controlled, "I'm here to see my daughter." The room fell silent. All eyes were on Ava's father. There was something about his presence, something that radiated authority. But it wasn't his uniform, his medals, or his obvious strength. It was something deeper, something that made even the toughest students shift uncomfortably in their seats. Ava's father walked toward her desk and sat down beside her without saying a word. The class watched, unsure of what to do. "Mr. Johnson, I wasn't expecting." Mr. Green trailed off, clearly nervous. "You didn't expect me." Ava's father interrupted, his voice calm but powerful. "I don't care what you expect, But I expect respect for my daughter. You see, your school, your teachers, have been treating her as if she's invisible. And I'm here to tell you that's a mistake." Ava looked up at her father. Her eyes were still calm, but her lips twitched into a small smile. The principal's face turned pale. I'm sorry. I didn't realize." "Exactly," Ava's father said, cutting him off. "You didn't realize. That's the problem with this place. You look at people like my daughter, and you think you know everything about them. You think you can treat them however you want." Mr. Green was visibly uncomfortable now. "Mr. Johnson, we will be making some changes here," he interrupted again, his tone firm and unwavering. "From today onward, my daughter will not be treated like she's less than anyone else. If you have a problem with that, we can discuss it in a more official setting." The entire class was in shock. They had never seen a parent speak like that to a teacher, especially not a parent of a student who was always so quiet. But Ava's father wasn't done yet. "Do you know what it takes to raise a child like this?" he asked, his eyes scanning the room. "It takes strength. It takes resilience. It takes more than what any school system can teach you. It takes knowing that your child is destined for more than what the world is willing to give them. Ava is not just a student. She is a force." The room was still. No one knew how to react. Ava's classmates shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Some looked at each other with wide eyes. Others looked down, ashamed of their past behavior. Ava's father stood up and turned to leave, but not before one final remark. "Remember this," he said, his voice echoing in the silent room. "You may underestimate my daughter today, but one day you will look back and regret that you ever treated her like she was anything less than extraordinary." With that, he walked out, leaving the entire classroom in stunned silence. Ava looked down at her desk, her hands trembling slightly. For the first time, she felt like something had changed. Something deep inside her was shifting. It wasn't just the words, it was the truth of them. The truth that she wasn't powerless, and the world was about to realize it. The day after Ava's father walked into the school, everything was different. It wasn't just because of his presence, his strong words, or the surprise he left behind. It was because of the silent shift that occurred in the hearts and minds of everyone who had been watching her, watching them both. By the time the bell rang for the next class, whispers had flooded the halls. But it wasn't about Ava's silence anymore. It wasn't about her dad's military background or the medals he wore. It was about respect. In the cafeteria, students sat in groups, talking in hushed tones. A few of them exchanged glances, hesitant to speak too loudly. The usual jokes, the whispers of that quiet girl were replaced by something else. Curiosity. "She wasn't just anyone," one student muttered, as if realizing something for the first time. "She had a reason to be quiet." Maya sat alone at the corner table, picking at her food. She didn't feel like eating. Everything had changed, and she couldn't stop thinking about what Ava's father had said. She had heard about his achievements before, but she never understood the weight of it all until now. She glanced across the room, and there was Ava, sitting alone at her usual table, like always. But this time, the atmosphere around her was different. She wasn't the girl who was ignored or laughed at. She wasn't the one hiding her power behind a veil of silence. No, now Ava was a quiet storm, and everyone knew it. Maya walked over to her, taking a deep breath. Ava was reading her book, eyes glued to the pages, oblivious to the looks around her. "Mind if I sit here?" Maya asked, her voice soft but unsure. Ava glanced up, surprised for a moment, then smiled warmly. "Of course." Maya sat down, her heart racing a little. She had to ask. She couldn't just keep wondering. "Ava," she began, "I've been thinking about what your dad said yesterday." Ava's eyes flickered for a second before she closed her book. "Yeah. I didn't realize what he meant until today," Maya said, her voice low. "I mean, no one thought you had a reason to be so quiet, but I think we all got it wrong." Ava looked at her, a small smile tugging at the corner of her lips. It's okay. People can be quick to judge. No, Maya shook her head. It's not okay. I used to think you were just different, you know. But now I see. There's strength in your silence. It's like you're waiting for something bigger. Ava blinked and then nodded slowly. I am. The bell rang, and both girls stood up, walking to class side by side. But the energy between them was different now. Ava wasn't just the quiet girl anymore. She wasn't just the student who blended into the background. Now she was the one everyone watched, waiting for her next move. As the day continued, something strange happened. The students who had once whispered behind her back began to avoid her. Not out of fear, but out of respect. And then came the real shocker. In Mr. Daniel's class, as Ava walked in and took her seat, something unexpected happened. The class, usually filled with laughter, talking, and whispers, was now silent. Not because they were afraid of her, but because they knew who she was. When the bell rang and the lesson started, Mr. Daniels called on her to answer a question that normally no one paid attention to. But this time, when Ava answered with quiet confidence, the room listened. Her voice was calm, but her words carried weight. Everyone was still for a moment, processing. Later that day, during recess, Maya and a few other students gathered near the basketball court, talking in low voices. I think we were wrong about Ava, one of them said. She's not just quiet. She's different. She's got something we don't have. Yeah, another girl agreed. Her dad doesn't have to be famous for her to be strong. She doesn't show it, but she's got this quiet power. Maya watched Ava across the yard, talking to a few younger students. They were laughing, but Ava didn't laugh with them. She just smiled quietly, her eyes distant, like she knew something they didn't. The next day after school, Mr. Green called for an assembly. The entire school gathered in the gym, the air thick with uncertainty. No one knew what was about to happen. As they all took their seats, the principal stood on stage, looking out at the students. The gym fell silent. Everyone waited. Mr. Green cleared his throat. I want to address something that has come to my attention. His voice echoed. There have been some behaviors in this school that were simply unacceptable. Some students have been treated unfairly. Some of our staff have shown a lack of respect. This will not continue. Not on my watch. The students shifted, their eyes wide, but no one interrupted. And Mr. Green continued, we will be making changes. We will be learning how to respect each other, not just based on what we think we know, but because everyone here deserves respect. Maya looked around. The other students were looking at each other, surprised, unsure of how to react. But they were all listening, really listening. Ava was sitting at the back of the gym, silent as always, but her eyes were focused. She didn't need to speak. She didn't need to prove anything. Her presence was all that was required. That day, the students left the gym with something new in their hearts. They didn't talk much on their way out. Some even looked at Ava as they passed, their eyes no longer filled with judgment, but with something else, something they didn't quite understand yet. Maya stood next to Ava before leaving. She smiled. You were right, she said, her voice filled with awe. You were always stronger than we thought. Ava didn't smile back, but her eyes sparkled, a quiet acknowledgement. She wasn't going to fight for their approval anymore. She didn't need to. The world would see her strength, with or without their approval. And as Ava walked out of the school building, her father's words echoed in her mind. One day, they will regret treating you like you were ordinary. Today was just the beginning. It had been weeks since Ava's father walked into the school. The buzz had faded, but one thing remained: change. Ava was no longer the quiet, unnoticed girl she had once been. She wasn't just respected, she was seen. Every day, she noticed the difference. Her classmates no longer whispered about her. Instead, they respected her space, her silence. Some even went out of their way to talk to her. though Ava didn't seek them out. The way she carried herself had shifted. No longer invisible, Ava's presence was strong and undeniable. But what changed most wasn't how others saw her, it was how she saw herself. She was no longer just the girl everyone underestimated. She wasn't just the daughter of a military hero. Ava had become someone bigger than both. One afternoon, after a long day of classes, Ava stood by the front gate of the school, waiting for her ride. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows on the ground. She was lost in thought when a black SUV pulled up to the gate. Ava didn't need to look up to know who it was. Her father stepped out, as always, dressed sharply in his business suit. His commanding presence made heads turn, but Ava wasn't concerned with anyone else's gaze. She didn't need to prove herself anymore. "Ready to go?" her father asked, his voice calm and steady. Ava nodded, but instead of walking to the car, she stood still, looking at the school one last time. This was the moment she had been waiting for, the moment where everything truly changed. Her father noticed her pause and followed her gaze. "Ava," he said, "what's on your mind?" "I've been thinking," she began slowly, her voice strong but quiet, "about how things used to be. How I used to be. I used to think I had to prove myself to them. That I had to show everyone I was strong, that I was worth something." Her father's eyes softened, his expression full of understanding. "Ava, you've always been strong. You just didn't see it. You didn't need anyone else to tell you that." Ava finally turned to face him, her face set in determination. "I know, but now I don't need to prove anything anymore. The world will see me for what I am, not because I said anything, but because of who I am. My silence is my strength." Her father smiled, proud of his daughter's growth. "You've learned that strength doesn't always need to be loud. Sometimes, the most powerful things are the quietest." Ava nodded, taking the deep breath. This moment was hers. No one could take it from her. She had found her voice in silence, and now no one would ever doubt her again. As they both got into the SUV, Ava's gaze lingered on the school one more time. She knew this was the place where she had been underestimated, but it was also the place where she had found her true power. And now, the world would see it. Her father started the engine, and as the car pulled away, Ava felt the weight of her father's words settle deep within her heart. She didn't need to shout to be heard. She didn't need to fight for attention. Her strength was already undeniable, even in her quietest moments. The world would see it soon enough. As they drove away, Ava looked out the window, a quiet smile playing on her lips. The future was waiting, and nothing at all, could stop her now.